Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Corrupt Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2012 ensemble sex comedy titled American Reunion. Now, American Reunion runs for 1 hour and 53 minutes long. It is directed by John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg. It is produced by Chris Moore, Craig Perry, Adam Hurst, and Warren Zide. Or is it Zide? I don't know. Z-I-D-E. The script was written by John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg. It is based off of the characters by Adam Hurst. It is composed by Lyle Workman. The cinematography is by Darren Okada. And it was edited by Jeff Betancourt. And the stars of the movie are Jason Biggs, Alyson Hannigan, Sean William Scott, Eugene Levy, Eddie K. Thomas, Chris Klein, Thomas Ian Nicholas, Tara Reid, Mena Suvari, John Cho, Jennifer Coolidge, Natasha Lyonne, Dania Ramirez, Katrina Bowden, Jay Harrington, Ali Cobrin, Chuck Hittinger, Shannon Elizabeth, Chris Owen, Justin Isfeld, Charlene Amoia, Vic Sahay, Molly Cheek, Rebecca De Morney, and a cameo appearance from former NFL player Chad Ochocinco. Is it just me, or does Steve Stifler's mother, played by Jennifer Coolidge, is like a mama bear who goes into hibernation and she only comes out until the next edition of the American Pie franchise, just so that she could do the next bone job to Finch? Yeah. It's just that she just doesn't seem to do any other projects other than the American Pie movies. I mean, what does she do in between those franchises? I mean, surely I'm sure she does other endeavors, but theatrical wise or TV series wise, you don't really see her in very much. I'll say one thing though, she does actually have a little more dimension to her character. Other than just being Finch's boy toy, much to the chagrin of Steve Stifler himself. So, waiting for her son and his friends to get together, I imagine her sitting in her room, sitting on a recliner, touching up on her cherry lipstick, ready to sink her teeth in hopes for his little friends to come out and play with her. Particularly Finch. She's got a thing for Finch and his little Finch, if you know what I'm saying. When we first get introduced to her, Janine was just a total knockout. I mean, hey, who wouldn't want to get it on with her, huh? You know what I'm saying? But cut to 13 years later in American Reunion, it looks as though her character never fully changed. Come to think of it, a lot of the other cast members don't seem to change. Jim always seems to find himself in awkward situations. Kevin is still a whiny bitch. Oz is still boring as bricks. Finch still has the hots for Stifler's mom. Vicky and Heather are pretty much just there because for a sex comedy romp, we need a few hot women. Even though it seems to me like Tara Reid's character, Vicky, has kind of aged. maybe it's just me, but I mean, make no mistake about it. Sure, they may have a bit of a dad gut. Maybe have a few grays. Maybe have a few receding hairlines. Hey, it's just par for the course of getting old. I mean, even though I gotta say I've kind of aged quite well compared to a lot of people, but you know, I've got I've got grays. I know from my broadcasts, it looks as if they're not too visible, but then again, I'm filming in the dark, so you can barely see the grays, but they are there. I've also have grown the middle-aged gut. Hey, imagine when I was young, you know, I used to be skinny like Slender Man. And yet, I could still eat like a pig and not gain a pound. Thank you, Jughead. And, yeah, I used to be like Jughead. I used to eat a lot and not gain a pound. I just can't say the same thing anymore as if I was to get up from my chair. But, you know things like that, you know. That's just all par for the course of getting old. You know? Okay. Yeah, and then, you know, you see, like, the old gang. But the good thing is that you get to see the old gang back again. No one is left out. Even some former alums from previous American Pie movies also come back, which is a good thing. Because I don't think American Wedding, we had the full gang back. I don't think Oz appeared in American Wedding. I don't think Mena Suvari's character Heather came back. But at least American Reunion, it actually genuinely felt like a reunion. And it seems like the cast has not lost their step. Sure, like I said, they've gotten a little older. They've gotten a little balder. They've gotten a little grayer. They've gotten a little more wrinkly. But hey, it happens to everyone. They're no different. It might appear stunning to some of the male audiences, but to me, it feels rather tragic. Because, let's face it, we don't get any younger as we go on. And I guess it kind of makes me feel kind of old. Maybe it makes me feel kind of older because this movie is practically 9 years old. And a lot has changed in the past 9 years, believe it or not. It seems that it's not just Janine and Stifler himself have not seemed to change their characters. I mean, Stifler is still a dick. And Janine is just still a hot mama. But the other cast members of the gang, well, they have gone through some changes. You know, they've become a little more older, a little more responsible. You know, they've gone on to get married, have jobs and kids as well. To indicate that they know Stifler is still the same person he was back in their high school days. So there's this big reunion party that's supposed to take place that was set up by Jim and Michelle. But the thing is that they don't want Stifler to know. So in some ways, you know, you kind of feel a little bit sympathetic for Stifler. Even though he's a jerk, they still sort of treat him like an outsider to the group. I mean, yeah, you know, he stirs trouble. And yeah, he's he's brash, he's rude, he's obnoxious, and he's kind of pretty much an unlikable character. But be that as it may, he is always the life of the party, and it just cannot, and like I've said before in my previous broadcast, it is not an American Pie movie without the antics of Steve Stifler. So they're throwing this big reunion party, which would feature like all the other Illuminists from the previous American Pie movies. But they just don't want Stifler to know because of his somewhat reputation for causing chaos and being quite a bit rowdy. Even though the cast are playing the parts of the gang reuniting for the first time, the real cast themselves actually feel like they've reunited, and the reactions and the emotions are very organic. And the gang in this fourth part, they seem to have a stronger connection than they did when they started back in 1999. And you know what? I believe that. And the reason why I believe that is because, let's face it, now that they have known each other for so many years, they just seem to just naturally exchange their dialogue and their scenes together, and they kind of play off as a much more cohesive unit than they were in 1999. I mean, you can understand in 1999 where they probably might not have had the strong chemistry then, but as they're a little older, they seem to be adjusted to each other. It just seems naturally fitting that they just seem so organically accustomed to one another. It just shows through their acting, through their performances. Or at least they should, I mean. It's nice that each of the characters kind of have an update from the last time we saw them together. I mean, Oz, played by Klein, he's now a sportscaster and is now dating a hot model. Even though I do believe he still has feelings for Heather. It's good to see Jim and Michelle are still married to each other. And they've remained married after all these years. And they also have a son. And of course, they're still the main principal two performers in there. They're not being like sidetracked to supporting. No, they're still the leads. You know. Yeah, they're married. They have a son. Even though I think it's kind of a bit impossible that their son is as old as 8 years old. And then you kind of like compare to the last American Pie movie, which was direct for spin-off. I think it was, I believe, I don't remember whether it was The Book of Love or The Naked Mile. But I just don't seem like the son is, what is he, like about 8 years old? Yeah, they couldn't have had a son in between the American Reunion and the last direct-for-video spin-off. The son should have been about a little younger. Okay, but oh well, no use fighting City Hall. However, though, their sex life is kind of in a rut, as they're both battling commitments like jobs, raising a child, paying off the mortgage, doing all these other boring, dull, wanton adult routines. You know, by the time they both come home from work, they're tired. They're not in the mood for any kind of fellatio. So it feels as though it's just the magic that Jim and Michelle had back in American Pie 2, An American Wedding, well, that's kind of like been put on the back burner. So what they're trying to do is try to recreate their the magic that they had almost a decade ago, in hopes that their drive is back in full gears. That's kind of like what the main plot is. Alright, we have Kevin, played by Thomas Ian Nicholas. He's now a home employed and works as an architect. He still has feelings for Vicky. And then you have Finch, played by Eddie K. Thomas. He claims to have been an explorer who climbs mountains and goes to exotic nightclubs. I mean, in the opening scenes, like, he actually meets the gang driving a moped, which is kind of like an upgrade from the previous American Pie movie where he meets the gang on a scooter. But then we reveal that he's not really the explorer that we all think he is. In fact, he's just a lowly employee at a Staples store. Oh, and that moped he had, it's not his. It's his boss's that he stole because his boss refused to give him a raise. And then we have Vicky, who has now been a veteran employee who has been working in the same New York firm in the last 10 years. And then there's Heather. She's an intern at a hospital. And she has a boyfriend who's a cardiologist, played by Jay Harrington. So, at least it's good to know that they have all made progress in their lives, so to speak. Even Stifler himself has some kind of office job. But he doesn't seem to get along very well with his employees. Big surprise. Especially his boss, who is a complete and total asshole. So in some ways, even though Stifler can be kind of an asshole, his boss is like the whole rump of an ass. There's also some very strange subplot too. It involves a girl that Jim babysat once. I forget her name, but she was played by Cobrin. Not Corbin, I keep calling her Corbin. Cobrin. BR, not RB. Okay. She has now grown up and is planning to itch to lose her virginity with Jim, which might be a little unorthodox even for American Pie standards. That doesn't make things worse. Her mother seems to be somewhat attracted to Oz, because Oz once appeared as a guest on Celebrity Dance Off, which is kind of like a parody to Dancing with the Stars. And it seems like she also has the hots for Oz. And of course, there's a lot of, awkward dispositions within each of the characters, like you would probably have expected. Oh yeah, and of course, let's not forget, last but not least, we have Eugene Levy back. The only guy who has been in all 4 American Pie movies, including those god-awful direct-for-video spin-offs, which I really couldn't give a flying fuck about. Do you ever think I'll ever see those direct-for-video spin-offs? Not a chance. Yeah. And of course, like Eugene Levy's character's always been referred to as Jim's dad, even though his character's name is Noah Levenstein. Yeah, in this one, actually, you kind of feel a little sad about him because, up into the movie American Reunion, it appears that since we've last seen him, it's, sadly his wife, played by Molly Cheek. Well, let's just say she's opened up a flower shop in the lower sections of the basement, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, okay, I'll cut to the riddle. She's dead. I just thought I'd make it seem a little more... Okay, make it a little less obvious. But if you don't want me to talk in riddles, fine. Yeah, you kind of feel a little bit sad for the poor guy. Of course, Jim tries to find ways to cheer him up. And, even though Eugene Levy always seems to be, always this kind, understanding individual, you could tell deep down inside that he's really a sad wreck. So even though the American Pie movies have tended to have a lot of over-the-top, grossed-out sexual innuendos, you do see a little tad bits of some dramatic merit to this one compared to the other ones. Yeah, I know that sometimes as you get older relatives just seem to... Let's not get into this. I don't want to start to get melancholy. But he's back, and he tips on the perfect method for sexually based activities. And we always find himself in awkward situations, whether it be walking in on Jim when he's doing private activities. There was a memorable scene involving Noah when a girl tries to give him a makeover, and one of those procedures involves plucking off his overly bushy eyebrows. Now, if you all know that in the history, and all know that, Eugene Levy, he's kind of been around forever. And one of his trademarks is those big, bushy eyebrows. Come on now, who doesn't know Eugene Levy? This guy's a legend in Canadian comedy. Started, at the SCTV, along with other alums like Catherine O'Hara, John Candy, and Martin Short. Yeah. He stops her in her tracks and tells her it's his trademark, which is kind of a bit of a parody in itself. And like I said, we feel more saddened for him this time around, as he's now been a widow for 3 years and can't seem to fully get over it. But at least, it's good to know that he revives himself near the end, and he actually gets some counseling from, of all people, Stifler's mom. And near the end of the movie, they go to a movie together, and they get pretty excited with each other, if you know what I mean. Oh, I'm sure it had a happy ending. And I'm not talking about the movie they're watching. I'm talking about the happy ending with themselves. I guess even though his wife cannot be replaced, I'm sure Mrs. Stifler might be someone to fill the void. Oh, there's also a good act of revenge, too. See, over the years, Finch has often... Well, he's been selling hot dogs to Stifler's mother. Well, to counteract that, it appears as though as if Finch's mother, Rachel, played by Rebecca de Morney, well, let's just say she's aged quite gracefully, too. Even so much so that Stifler himself gets it on with Finch's mother. I guess what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so to speak. But aside from the main characters, even the side characters also seem to come back with some other startling revelations, including, Jessica, played by Natasha Lyonne. She comes out and reveals that she's LGBT. Of course, we also have John Cho and John and Justin are back too. You know. Yeah. And, of course, Jim's old flame Nadia also comes back. We also have, Chris Owen, the Shermanator. He is back. So, a lot of the characters and a lot of the main principal characters and the side characters all seem to return. This was a finale that actually did feel like a finale. And sure, it felt natural that teens were sex-driven individuals back in their high school days, and the original American Pie film showcases that in a comical but logical perspective. And I guess that was kind of par for the course for a lot of the movies that came out in the late 90s into the early 2000s. These days, with politically correct stuff, this probably would not fly very well. Though you won't see me complain, a lot of people probably would, unfortunately. And a lot of this stuff would not aside very well because the movie does seem to be somewhat sexist, obviously. And sometimes some of the things that Stifler says could also borderline on being overly offensive and even sometimes homophobic. Misogyny is also pretty frequent. But if you come in expecting expecting what's going to happen, then what do you got to complain about? And of course, if you feel offended, here's my advice. Don't watch it. There. And You know, it's really, really great. Sure, it might be awkward for their age to still be, you know, sexually active, but it still provides many, many laughs. And like I said, of course, the one who provides the most laughs of them all, I still gotta hand it to Seann William Scott. He truly does make this character his own, and he just steals every scene he's in. You may not particularly like his demeanor because he's an asshole, but he is a funny asshole. His wild demeanor and over-the-top reactions and his ability to cause mischief is just pure genius. I mean, who can ever forget the time when he destroyed jet skis that belongs to a couple of jerks is purely poetic. And sure, he might come down hard on his friends, and his friends try to avoid him like the plague. There are times when he actually does defend them, and actually turns out that the guy is actually more sympathetic than he is as an asshole. And sometimes you do feel bad that the guys leave him out, but at least in the end of this movie, he will become more and more inclusive with them. And sure, the root of the popularity of the franchise started with Jim placing his pecker in a piece of pie. Oh, I just came up with a new tongue twister. The jokes and the gags never once did reinvent itself. It's like, okay, you've seen one American Pie movie, you pretty much have the same recycled junk over again. And maybe it was meant to be that way. So American Reunion brought the same things back to the table with slightly different twists. But still, very little has changed since its inception back in 1999. And if you follow the theatrical releases of the American Pie movies, and God have mercy on your souls, the direct-to-video spin-offs, which I don't really care much about, you might enjoy this movie a lot. Because nothing new here is to offer. So I guess I gotta go do some ratings. And if I was to rate this movie a scale out of 10, I would give American Reunion a 7.5 out of 10. I never said it was perfect. There's flaws.
Pretty close. Perfect.
Oh, definitely the good outweigh the bad, but it's like nothing really new has happened. They just got a little older. They just got a little bit of an upgrade. And Steve Stifler is still Stifler. What do you got to complain about? So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.